Hi, this is Daryl Meyer from Keller, Texas. Today is Tuesday, October 26, 2010. Let's get right into what's going on today. Now, yesterday I told you about this Catholic synod led by the Archbishop Cyril Salim Boustros. Got a lot of comments and messages sent to me over this one. I just want to clarify, first of all, it wasn't me condemning the Catholic Church. I was quoting what Cyril Salim Boustros was saying, and I just kind of want to go over it briefly, that he led this synod declaring that the promise made by God to Abraham and his descendants to give them the land of Israel was abolished by Jesus. Specifically, here's what Archbishop Boustros declared. For Christians, one can no longer talk of the land promised to the Jewish people. There is no longer a favored people. There is no longer a chosen people. All men and women of every country have become the chosen people. Clearly, that's a replacement theology. Now, this position affirmed by Archbishop Boustros is a simple restatement of the ancient Catholic Church position of replacement theology, which is a faulty interpretation of the Bible, and it has been demonstrated to be historically incorrect. Now, when God initiated the beginning of redemptive covenants with Abraham, He promised Abraham blessing, global ministry, and the land of Israel. God made Abraham and his descendants special stewards of this land. These promises were eternal. I just want to clarify that people know the truth on this. Genesis 17:7, God said, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your descendants after you. So I'm not sure how Archbishop Boustros could misinterpret words as descendants and everlasting. I just want to go on to say that not only that, but beyond these references, we have bold affirmation of the same thing made in the New Testament by none other than the Apostle Paul, and believe it or not, written to the Mother Church, which Archbishop Boustros serves. In Romans 11:1, Paul said, I say then, God has not rejected His people, has He? May it never be. For I too am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. And just so we don't mistake who Paul's talking about, later in the same dissertation, he identifies his subject as those who are seen as enemies of the gospel, so we know that he was not speaking of Christians as descendants of Abraham. In Romans 11:28 through 29, it says, From the standpoint of the gospel, they are enemies for your sake, but from the standpoint of God's choice, they are beloved for the sake of their fathers, for the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. So I just kind of wanted to go over that a little bit. I'm not dissing on Catholics. I just want to make sure you know that. I've seen a lot of your comments, though, and it's rather disturbing. Some of my friends that have grown up in the Catholic Church that have sent me some very strong messages. And, let me just reiterate. There's one way to God the Father, and that's through Jesus Christ the Son. Anyone who says otherwise is on the broad road to destruction. Period. That's what my Bible says. So whether you're Jewish and you don't believe Jesus is the Messiah, or whether you're Scientologist or Mormon or a purple monkey god follower, whatever, there's only one way to God the Father, and that is through Jesus Christ the Son. And a lot of people like to say, oh, that's very narrow-minded, whatever. I say, thank you, God, for showing us the way. Thank you. Okay, I want to go over a few prophecies that are real close to us right now. Revelation 9:14 through 16. It's the sixth angel who had the trumpet, said, Release the angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates, and the four angels who had been kept ready for this very hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind. The number of the mounted troops was 200 million. Okay, Revelation 16:12, the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. Revelation 16:12. Revelation 16:8, the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was given power to scorch people with fire. Revelation 7:16, never again will they hunger, Never again will they thirst. The sun will not beat upon them, nor any scorching heat. There's a lot of things going on right now that these prophecies, everything Jesus warned would happen in the last days, is taking place right before our eyes. There's a report about a drought that's hit many nations in the Middle East. Talks about what's happening to Syria and Iraq. The sun's intense heat is not only causing this major drought and famine, but it's helping the Euphrates River to dry up. Not only that, but the Turkish people have the Ataturk Dam in Turkey that they can push a button and raise the flood levels and cause the Euphrates River to dry up. Okay, so let's go over some other things happening in the news today. This out of JerusalemPost.com. Hezbollah has 10,000 operatives manning 40,000 missiles. The French daily Le Figaro reveals new information on military structure of Shiite group, including transport and manufacture of rockets. Okay, a report in the French daily Le Figaro late yesterday revealed new information on the military wing of Hezbollah's structural makeup, with details on the guerrilla group's 10,000 operatives and an arsenal of some 40,000 rockets. The report also focused on Syria's role in Hezbollah operations in both manufacture and transportation of rockets. I always perk up when I see Syria, because Damascus, the prophecy in Isaiah 17:1 that says Damascus will no longer be a city, but become a ruinous heap, and it's never happened in human history, one of the oldest cities on the face of the earth. I think we're very close to seeing this prophecy fulfilled. The unit responsible for transporting weapons from Damascus, Unit 108, received a delivery of Syrian missiles headed to Lebanon, according to Le Figaro. The shipment, which was apparently spotted by U.S. military intelligence, was said to have contained 26 M6002 missiles with a range of 250 kilometers. I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but one of their main bases for Hezbollah is in Damascus. You think they might get wiped out because Israel sees them as a major threat? Alright, here's something out of WorldNet Daily. You know, you heard me talk about Barack Obama intentionally leaving out God the Creator out of 3 speeches that he has said about the Declaration of Independence. Well, here's another woman under God dropped from the pledge on the House floor. Yet another elected official is under fire for omitting references to God in America's historical documents and creeds. U.S. Representative Betty McCollum, out of Minnesota, leading the floor of the U.S. House and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, conspicuously goes silent when the words "under God" would normally be said. That's where we are today, people. Godlessness, lawlessness, craziness. How about this out of WorldNet Daily? Carter vows to push for sanctions against Israel. Yeah, he wants President Obama to meet with Hamas and push sanctions against Israel, saying that it's all their fault that there's no peace in the Middle East. Really? Wow. So he wants to continue his legacy of being the worst president in history and be an anti-Semite and go on record as being a Jew hater. You should read this story. He's clearly a Jew hater. Sorry, I'm not going to mix words. I'm not politically correct. I call it like I see it, and I'm sick of political correctness. Okay? If I see a watermelon, I'm going to call it a watermelon. Okay? If I see a Jew hater, I'm going to call him a Jew hater, and that's what he is. It just blew me away reading this story about Carter, and I don't get it. I just don't get it. The whole world coming against Israel and the Jewish people. Here's another story out of the Jerusalem Post. The UN representative says, "We support an independent Palestinian state by next year." UN Special Coordinator for Middle East Peace Negotiations Robert H. Sari expressed the UN support for the declaration of an independent Palestinian state to Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Salam Fayyad while the two picked olives together today near the West Bank village, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, close to an Israeli settlement. He said all international players are now in agreement that the Palestinians are ready for statehood at any point in the near future, said Perry. He continued, we are in the home stretch of your agenda to reach that point by August next year, and you have our full support. Where's Israel in these negotiations? Strangely absent. Here's a story out of the IsraelToday.com magazine. Israel lawmaker calls for arrest of U.S. war criminals. Here's a twist. An Israeli Knesset member yesterday sought to turn the tables on the U.S. and the wider Western world by calling for an international investigation into American military activities in Iraq and the arrest of American war criminals. Wow. In a letter to the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, lawmaker Michael Ben-Ari of the National Union Party insisted that the U.S. military documents recently leaked by the website WikiLeaks were grounds for an official probe. Okay, among other things, the documents appear to reveal that an average of 31 Iraqi civilians have been killed every day since American forces invaded in 2003, and that on numerous occasions American soldiers have tortured, raped, and otherwise abused Iraqi nationals. Wow, you think that's going to cause any problems between the U.S. and Israel? Maybe damage some friendships? Wow. Here's a story out of onejerusalem.org. It says NPR, Obama, ACLU. We're free to speak our minds on everything. The assault on professional journalists, publishers, comedians, etc., when it comes to expressing views about Muslims and Islam, must cease and desist. You probably heard about Juan Williams, the former National Public Radio NPR news analyst, getting fired for saying that when he sees an Arab in his full garb at an airport, it makes him nervous. He got fired for that? Yes, he did. Seems we're free to talk about anything except Muslims and Islam. And, of course, the White House is strangely silent on this. Of course, they come to the defense of the Ground Zero Mosque, but when something like this happens, strangely silent. Wonder why? Our Muslim president, that's why. I say free speech is under fire. It's under fire. Our right to free speech will probably be going away soon. Let me just tell you this other story. Another American is to forfeit a gold medal. Okay, American Lindsey Vonn must forfeit her gold medal by this Saturday. The International Olympic Committee announced today that it will take back the gold medal previously awarded to American skier Lindsey Vonn and give it to U.S. President Barack Obama. Olympic officials said Obama deserved the medal more than Vonn because no one has ever gone downhill faster than he has. Sorry, obviously that's not a true story. I just had to throw a little humor in there because all this other stuff's just mind-boggling. Okay, let's go to 2 Corinthians 5:21. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, "For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him." Okay, yesterday we talked about the physical. Today let's talk about the spiritual. We could never fully appreciate the physical pain that Christ endured for us on the cross. I mean, it should humble us to our dying day that he went through that for our sake, and yet his physical agony pales in comparison to what was happening on the spiritual level. As Jesus hung on the cross, he uttered something that gives incredible insight into what he was going through. On a spiritual level, it was something that wounded him on a level that we'll never be able to fully fathom. In Matthew 27:46, he said, "About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now, Christ is doing two things here. He's pointing to the prophecy of Psalm 22 as applying to him, and he's expressing the sense of spiritual separation from his Father that he was experiencing on the cross. Now, don't misunderstand. The union between Father and Son remained intact, but their sense of communion was disrupted. So why did Jesus feel forsaken? Because 2 Corinthians 5:21 tells us that all of our sinfulness was placed on him. All of the sins of the world, of all people of all time, were heaped on his shoulders. And Habakkuk 1:13 tells us that God cannot even look upon sin. So something happened to Jesus on that cross that has never taken place in all eternity. Something came between him and his Father. Our sins. No physical pain could ever compare to this, because nothing can compare to the bond between the Father and Son. So we'll never fully appreciate what Jesus did for us. And we should be all that more thankful that He did this to save us from hell. God bless you.